This video is about your math book page 35. So this example says, Jackson and his grandfather constructed a model for a birdhouse. Many of their neighbors offered to buy the birdhouses. Jackson decided that building birdhouses could help him earn money for his summer camp, but he's not sure how long it will take him to finish all of the requests for birdhouses. If Jackson can build 7 birdhouses in 5 hours, write an equation that will allow Jackson to calculate the time it will take him to build any given number of birdhouses, assuming he works at a constant rate. So there's a few bits of information right here that really stand out to me because I know they're going to be important as we work out this problem. It says he's got the ability to build 7 birdhouses in 5 hours. And it also tells me he's working at a constant rate. So I know that this is going to have a proportional relationship between the hours worked and the number of birdhouses that he's able to produce. So to start off, we've got to write an equation that we can use to find out how long it'll take him to build any number of birdhouses. So that's meaning we got to use those variables, set up an equation to represent this proportional relationship. And what I've taught you is you start out with y equals, and then you put a spot for the unit rate and multiply that by x. Okay? So since we don't really have any labels right off the bat right now, you can kind of think about, well, what would be your independent variable and what would be your dependent variable? Does the number of birdhouses built depend on how much time he's got, or does the time depend on how many birdhouses are built? Well, time is typically, in most cases, the independent variable. So I know that x is going to represent the time, okay? And if you recall from previous notes, time is typically in the denominator. So let's go ahead and find that unit rate. And we would like hours in the denominator. And then the 7 birdhouses on the top, which would be the numerator. So that right there is just the rate to find the unit rate. Let's go ahead and set up a proportion to set up the equal fractions right here. And to go from 5 to 1 using multiplication or division, you'd have to use division. It'd be 5 divided by 5, because 5 divided by 5 is 1, so you have to go 7 divided by 5, okay? And when you go 7 divided by 5, you're going to get a fraction or a decimal. Same thing, so 7 divided by 5, 1 4/10. Okay, and you know how I just said a fraction or a decimal, same thing? What I mean by that, in case you're like thoroughly confused, you know how it was 1.4? Well, 1 4/10 is the same as 1 4/10, okay? And you could totally write that up here, but it just would look maybe a little bit confusing having like a mixed number over 1, but it's up to you. Oops. So right there, if you could read it, it says you can build a 1 4/10 of a birdhouse in 1 hour. That's the unit rate. So we're going to substitute that value back over here where the unit rate goes, and I'm going to just write 1 4/10. And now is a great time to label, because see how we've done all the work up here? You should hopefully remember that it's y divided by x for your unit rate. So the y value is birdhouses, so right there we're going to label that y as number of birdhouses. Number of birdhouses that he can build, but I didn't really want to waste too much room right there, but that's what it means. And then the x value is hours. And then this 1 4/10 is the unit rate. And what that means is he can build 1 4/10 of a birdhouse, or birdhouses, per hour. Okay? Now the next problem asks, how many birdhouses can Jackson build in 40 hours? So let's go ahead and figure that out. I'm going to show you 3 ways to do this, okay? They probably want you to use the equation, but I really want you to be flexible in your thinking and see it from, all angles. So I'm going to show you first using an equation. Not any equation, this equation. So the equation was y equals 1 4/10 times x. And you see how you have it all labeled up here really nicely? That's really, really good, because that helps you out like times like these. Okay, so it says 40 hours. So you got to think to yourself, where does that 40 go? Does it go in for hours, or does it go in for number of birdhouses? Well, since it says hours, you're going to substitute in for the hours department right there, okay? So keep your y as a variable because we don't know the number of birdhouses yet, but we will. And instead of putting an x right there, you're going to substitute that value of 40. And so you will go 1 4/10 multiplied by 40, and you should get 56 birdhouses. That's how many Jackson can build in 40 hours. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to show you how to do it using proportions or equivalent fractions. Okay, so I'm going to set up two equal fractions. What was the unit rate right there? Per 1 hour. Okay, so we know that. And we're concerned about how many he can build in 40 hours. So you see how the hours is in the denominator, so we're going to put 40 hours there. And to get from 1 to 40, using multiplication or division, what do you have to use? We would have to multiply. 1 times 40 equals 40. So multiply this up here, or this denominator by 40, and also do that to the numerator. So 1 4/10 times 40. And you get 56. 56 birdhouses. All right, the third way that I want to show you is using a table. The fourth way that you could totally do this is using a graph, but I don't want to take the time to really create a graph of this. You can if you want though, and it would not be wrong. Well, unless you did it wrong. Using a table. So X and Y in my table. And X represented hours, Y represented the number of birdhouses. And if you're like, where do I get the values for my table? You get it just from the information here. They gave you this, you got this, and let's fill it in. So 7 birdhouses in 5 hours. You know, in 1 hour, he can make 1 4/10 of a birdhouse. And what they're concerned about is that 40 hours right there. So since it's hours, I'm going to put a 40 right there. And remember, to go from the x value to get the corresponding y value, you folks multiplied by 1 4/10. See, look, 5 times 1 4/10 equals 7. So 1 times 1 4/10 is 1 4/10. So let's just go 40 times 1 4/10 to get this value right here. Oh, look, same answer, because there's so many ways that you can figure this out, and I've just shown you 3 of them. Okay, now letter C. How long will it take Jackson to build 35 birdhouses? Use the equation from part A to solve the problem. Well, yes, you're going to do that, and I'm going to show you how to use it, how to find it using proportions, and how to find it using a table. Okay, because I want you to be really confident in using each one of these. Okay, that's why we're practicing to get better at it. So using equation, this one right here, and what were they talking about? Oh, 35 birdhouses. He's building, and they're wondering how long it'll take. So see how it's completely labeled up there? How long will it take to build 35 birdhouses? We got to figure out where to put that 35 into. Do you substitute it in for the y or for the x? Think about it. It says birdhouses, so you plug it in for birdhouses. So instead of the y, you're going to put a 35. Keep your unit rate, and we don't know how many hours yet, so we're going to keep that as a variable until you solve for it. So let's go ahead and solve for x. So we start with x, and we build it. We multiplied it by 1 4/10. So the inverse operation multiplying by 1 4/10 is to divide by 1 4/10. If you can see that, and you're going to divide by 1 4/10 on both sides of that equal sign, okay? 1 4/10 divided by 1 4/10 is 1. 1 times x is x. 35 divided by 1 4/10 is 25. So double check your labeling. Is it 25 birdhouses or 25 hours? Well, x represents hours, so this is 25 hours. Okay, that's how long it'll take Jackson to build 35 birdhouses. Okay, the next way I want to show you, so you get good at it, is using proportions. We're going to get the same exact answer, but you need practice. Especially because I don't want you to forget this when we move on. Okay, what was that unit rate? It was 1 4/10 of a birdhouse per hour. And we're concerned about building 35 birdhouses, so that's going to go in the numerator. I don't know how to spell bird, I guess. Birdhouses. And how did we go from 1 4/10 to 35? What did we multiply by? Well, I'm just going to go 35 divided by 1 4/10 to figure out what I multiplied 1 4/10 by to get to 35. So 35 divided by 1 4/10 is 25. So I had to take this numerator and multiply it by 25 to get this guy. And I'm going to take this denominator and multiply it by 25 to get this guy. 1 times 25 is 25, 25 hours. Okay? Alright, now let's go the third way. It's using a table. And that says using, despite my sloppy handwriting. And I'm just going to use the exact same values in the table that we already know about because I've already extracted that information from the information provided. It says hours, this says birdhouses. We know he can make 5 birdhouses. He can make, in 5 hours, he can make 7 birdhouses. In 1 hour, he can make 1 4/10 of a birdhouse. And so then when they give us this 35 birdhouses, we're going to put birdhouses in the birdhouses section. And remember our unit rate was 1 4/10. So we're multiplying the x value by 1 4/10 each time to get the corresponding y value. But you know how we're supposed to multiply this by 1 4/10 to get this. I have to go backwards, so I have to go 35 divided by 1 4/10. Oh look, it's 25. And to double check, you can go 25 times 1 4/10. Is that 35? Heck yeah. So it's 25 hours. So when the directions, like on an assessment or anything, just ask you the question, you can decide which strategy you want to use to come to the answer, okay? Because I hope you're well versed in all of them. Letter D, how long will it take to build 71 birdhouses? And it wants to use the equation, but yeah, you know me, I'm going to make you do all 3 ways. And if I was really wanting you to practice this, I'd make you also create a graph. But I know maybe you don't have graph paper accessible to you at this very moment. Okay, how long will it take to build 71 birdhouses? Let's start with that equation. So let's see, birdhouses, that is y. So instead of writing the letter y, the variable y, I'm going to put 71. But keep the unit rate, and we're going to keep that variable of x because we got to solve for it. We don't know how many hours it will take him. So let's build this. We started with x, then we multiplied it by 1 4/10. So the inverse operation multiplying by 1 4/10 is to divide by 1 4/10, and you're going to do that to both sides of that equal sign. 1 4/10 divided by 1 4/10 is 1. 1 times x is 1x, or x, same thing. So I gotta go 71 divided by 1 4/10. Okay, and I'm just gonna go ahead and round it to the nearest hundredth. So it'd be 50 and 71 hundredths, okay? Here's a hundredths place. Look behind it in the thousandths place. That number is not 5 or above, so this 1 stays the same. 50.71. 50 and 71 hundredths. Now, is that birdhouses or hours? Think about it. X represented hours, so this is labeled hours. Okay? Okay, let's use proportions. You know, equivalent fractions. Let's use those equivalent fractions. Now, did you know you don't have to use the unit rate? You could totally use this right here, 7/5. That would still work also. Let me go ahead and show you that because they gave you this and you know it's a proportion relationship. So I'll show you. 7 birdhouses. Whoops. That says birdhouses, just humor me. In 5 hours. And we're concerned about making 71 birdhouses, so that goes in the numerator. And we don't know the hours yet. It's something hours. So you got to figure out, gosh, how did we go from 7 to 71? Well, I'm going to go 71 divided by 7 to figure out what I had multiplied by, okay? 7 times what number, 71? Let's figure it out by going 71 divided by 7. Okay, and you see it's about, we'll round to your hundredth, 10.14, 10 and 14 hundredths. So times 10 and 14 hundredths. So in the denominator, I'm going to also multiply by 10 and 14 hundredths. And when I do that, 10.14 times 5 is 50.7. So if you're like, that's not what I got over here. Here, see how you round it to the nearest hundredth? Well, that's like, I would count that as close enough, okay? And it's because the reason it got rounded right here is because I rounded it right there. So it'll be a tiny bit off, but that's not enough to be, like, to cry about. So 50 and 7 tenths of an hour. Okay. All right, and let's go ahead and use a table. X and Y, and X stood for hours. My handwriting is just getting worse and worse and worse. I am so sorry. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and use 5 and 7. And I don't really have much room because of all this logo stuff, so I'm just gonna go right to the point here. 71 birdhouses, 71 birdhouses, there's 71. We had multiplied by 1 and 4/10 to go from here to here. 5 times 1 and 4/10 is 7. So I'm supposed to take this x value and multiply it with 1 and 4/10 to get this y value, but I only have the y value, so I have to work backwards and go 71 divided by 1.4. 1 divided by 1 and 4/10. And that's 50.7 or 50.71, depending on where you round. Okay, and that is hours. Okay, bye.